Time for another video discussion in the Clinical Toxicology series. This one is about fumigants, corresponding to Goldfrank's chapter 108. The learning objectives for this session are that you'll be able to name at least 3 substances used as pesticide fumigant, and to describe the general treatment principle for fumigant-exposed patients. Fumigants are a diverse set of chemical pesticides that either are, or they release, toxic gases. And those gases are then absorbed by any pests in the area, hopefully killing them. And there are fumigants that are more for insects or rodents or nematodes, certain plant seeds or fungi, but what they have in common is that they all kill living organisms, so it's not too much of a leap to guess that human exposures are probably not a good idea. The textbook chapter spends most of its time on the metal phosphides and the phosphine gas, pH3, that they create, and also mentions methyl bromide, dichloropropene, and sulfuryl fluoride. With regard to the learning objective about the general treatment principle, that general principle is to remove the person from continued exposure. Outside of the hospital, that might involve the use of protective gear or hazmat teams, but once a patient has arrived at the hospital for medical care, they've probably had all or most of the decontamination they'll need if they were only exposed to a toxic gas. The photograph here is to remind me to mention that the most common application of fumigation most of us are likely to see, unless we're in a specific pest control related business, are these fumigation tents that are set up around homes or other buildings. When my daughters were young, we always joked that a very limited circus was in town when we saw these tents. But if you know that fumigation involves a gas exposure, it makes sense to keep it all enclosed so that it can percolate through the building without being diluted until all of the pests are killed. And then you take down the tent and let the building air out. Now that we've talked about all of the general issues, the rest of this discussion is going to cover a few fumigant-specific items. The metal phosphides, like zinc phosphide and aluminum phosphide, are widely used as grain fumigants, but they are also used as domestic rodenticides. Imagine if you had a large shipment of grain. It would be nice to protect that grain from mice and rats and also from being spoiled by fungal rot. So you throw around some of these metal phosphide pellets around the grain, and they will slowly react with the water in the atmosphere, releasing phosphine gas, which will then kill the rodents and suppress fungal growth. Or if you had a problem with moles or gophers, which are burrowing around your property, you could dump some of these pellets into their burrows, where they are either eaten by the rodents or react with water in the air and the soil to release phosphine, which, because it's heavier than air, will accumulate in the tunnels and poison the rodents by inhaling it instead. But because the metal phosphides are available in tablets, that means it's possible for a person to intentionally ingest them. The phosphides will then be in contact with water, therefore releasing phosphine into the victim's body, where it acts as a so-called protoplasmic poison, inhibiting mitochondria and therefore ATP production in multiple ways. People who have ingested metal phosphides are exhaling some phosphine and are said to have a breath that smells like garlic or rotting fish. Metal phosphide ingestion has an alarmingly high mortality, and there are many suggested treatment options, which suggests to me that we really don't know what is best, so I don't recommend you try to memorize these options. Methyl bromide has been banned for use as a fumigant in the United States, but that doesn't mean that exposures won't ever happen. With methyl bromide, it's possible to develop some pretty serious neurotoxicity in the absence of any irritative effects that would give you some warning and make you want to leave the area. That's what happened in where I'm going to show you some news video footage of a family exposed to methyl bromide while on vacation in the Virgin Islands in 2015.
A criminal investigation underway at this luxury hotel in St. John's in the U.S. Virgin Islands, after a family of 4 on vacation from Delaware was allegedly poisoned by methyl bromide, a deadly pesticide commonly used in agriculture.
It couldn't have happened to a better family and better people, and they're all around. They're one of those families that everyone likes to be around.
The company, who rents out a villa at the Sirenusa Resort, told CNN the pest control company Terminex fumigated the lower unit on March 18th, right in the middle of the family's stay. The odorless, nearly undetectable gas attacks the lung and nervous system, causing respiratory and heart failure. So toxic, it's banned from use indoors within the U.S. Even the World Meteorological Organization says methyl bromide is so destructive, it significantly contributes to the thinning of the Earth's stratospheric ozone layer.
It's really scary to think that this could happen to somebody that you know.
The father, Steve Esmond, was found in a coma while his sons 14 and 16 and their mother, Teresa Devine, were having severe seizures, according to the family's lawyer. The parents' condition improved after the family was airlifted back to the U.S. The mother released from the hospital, but the attorney said on Saturday both of the boys remain in a coma. Terminix told CNN in a statement that they are, quote, looking into this matter internally and cooperating with authorities, and they join the community in wishing them a speedy recovery. Nick Valencia, CNN, New York.
Sulfuryl fluoride is used in tent fumigation of homes to kill termites, and this is very likely the stuff being used whenever you see someone's home wrapped in a colorful tent. Very often they put some chloropicrin in the fumigant gas, because sulfuryl fluoride, while it can and does cause mucous membrane irritation, isn't irritating enough to make people flee exposure fast enough to be safe. Chloropicrin is actually a tear gas, which is a class of chemicals that are very irritating, but not especially dangerous in and of themselves, so that they're good at making people flee the area, so they work for crowd control and breaking up riots. And the only fumigant-exposed patient I've seen clinically in the emergency department was a young man who re-entered his home that was being fumigated with sulfuryl fluoride. If I remember correctly, there was some paperwork he had left inside that he really needed to get, and he definitely knew he wasn't supposed to go back in the building. He mostly complained of eye, nose, mouth, and throat irritation, which could have been from the chloropicrin, and he was also nauseated, dizzy, and complaining of paresthesias, numbness and tingling in his hands and fingers, which might have been from hyperventilation, or it could have been from hypocalcemia, which may occur from sulfuryl fluoride exposure. So I checked his electrolytes and an EKG, since hypocalcemia could have prolonged the QT interval. He did have mild hypocalcemia, and he was observed in the ED for a few hours, and then he felt better, and then he was discharged home. Sorry I don't have a more exciting story to tell you. That's it for the Fumigants. I'll be seeing you around.